The green chair was colored using the Prismacolor Moss Green. These pencils come in sets that are quite expensive, or you can buy them individually. I like to just pick up the colors that I tend to use. I think I do have a set, but most of the colors, I just go and pick up onesie twosies. So I colored this one, so there are two colors on this actually. There's the green of the chair, and you can tell where I went a little bit darker around the edges just to try my way of making it shaded and pop. And then I used just the lightest coat of, let's see, light umber on the book cover. I mean, very, very, very light, barely anything on there. Once you have that colored, then you're gonna set the color with a fixative. I'm using the Jacquard 100 colorless extender, which is available on Amazon, and a little bit less, a long time. So I'll show you this book. Let's see, I've washed my brush, so there shouldn't be any other colors on it because I've been doing some other coloring. But it's a good idea to wash your brush between fixing. Now, you only want to paint over where you've actually colored. You don't want to paint into the regular fabric without, out here. You don't want to just go out like that because it will actually drag that color out into the fabric that where you don't want it. So this is turning out just what I wanted, just a very, 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 very light color. You don't need a real thick coat. And what this does is it will set it so that while you're stitching, the colors don't rub off, which they will otherwise. And when you're done, you press it, and then the colors are permanent. Since there isn't a lot of color in this, I'm not going to rinse my brush. I'm just going to move on to the green. But again, I'm not going to take my brush just like this or go into the book because it might drag some of that green. So just stay within the color that you're coloring. The back of this chair has a little doily thing. I had a grandma who did crochet. Oh my gosh, she could crochet so fast. These little tiny delicate things. So I know this isn't crochet, but I'm gonna stitch it so that it has like, hopefully, it'll look like it's a little bit, what's it called? It's like a cut work where there's like embroidery and then they cut out some of the negative spaces. Oh, so I could actually color those in green. I might do that. See, this is how the process is. It's kind of as it happens, things change. I could make it into a little quilt someday. I plan on having grandkids. It'd be kind of fun to have a quilt with a bunch of different fun images on it. Okay, so on the chair, you can see I shaded and it picks up more. You can see it a little better once you paint on the fixative. You can actually use the fixative to kind of smoosh the colors around to get them where you want them. It does make the colors pop a little bit more. You can see how that's brighter than here. So if you're using your own colors and you're not sure what colors you want to use, I would recommend doing it on a sample piece of fabric first, just to make sure that it's going to be the color you want once you paint this fixative on. The pattern is printed in reverse, although in this case it doesn't make a difference because there's no writing, there's nothing directional in here. But if there was something directional, you definitely need to do it in reverse. So I printed the pattern onto the paper side of 8.5 by 11 freezer paper. This is my rough pattern, yours will be better. And then I ironed the wax side to the back of my fabric, and now the pattern and the freezer paper are stuck together, the design, and it stabilizes the fabric. So when I go to trace it and color it, it makes it much simpler. Okay, so I'm gonna finish putting this on and then we'll be ready to start stitching. Here is our cozy chair for January. It's nice and fluffy and the perfect chair to sit back and read a book, have a cup of cocoa, This one I just used 3 colors. I used the green and this really light gray. It's called tea-dyed stone. And I used that color on the teacup, on this little doily, and on the pages in the book. And then I also used the bronze for the outline of the book. And so that's the color version. And then the second way I stitched this up was on Moda Crackle using blue. And most of these stitches are ones I've gone over before, so I won't go over all of them, but I did want to point out, so all the solid lines are stem stitched, unless otherwise noted, and in the pattern it will tell you that these little swirls of steam are back stitched. And then when you have lines of running stitches, like on this chair, on the pattern it shows, you know, each little individual stitch. You don't need to trace each individual one though. You can just trace a line and then do your own stitching. Tracing a line is much easier. So a running stitch is just like a you know, quilting stitch or any other stitch where you're sewing 2 things together. It's just up and down, up and down. Simple as that. Now on this back doily, or it's also called an antimacassar. So macassar was a type of oil that men used to wear in their hair. And so they'd put a nice like cloth over the back of a chair or couch so that that oil didn't rub off. So it was an anti-macassar. So just a little tidbit there. So there's some little dots in here. These are French knots, and these are French knots on the cups. The difference is this has 1 wrap around the needle because they needed to be really tiny. These needed to be a little chunkier. So these, you wrap the thread around 3 times. So 1, 2, 3, and then you put the needle really close to where you brought it up. You slide those wraps down to the fabric, hold them in place, and then just pull your needle through. And then this little doohickey up here, it's kind of supposed to look like an eyelet in a doily. That's a lazy daisy. So you bring your needle up at the base and then put your needle down in the same spot. Your needle goes up at the top of the loop and the thread goes under the needle. And pull your thread, and now you just tack it in place by putting the needle down right on the other side of that loop. And then the last part of this antimacassar is this little edge. And all I did there is a stem stitch. So I did a little smile, and then I do another little smile, a little curve. And you just go over the previous stitch. I take about a 1/16 of an inch, and since this is a curve, I want to carry my thread on the outside of the curve. The needle comes up right in the base of the previous stitch. Just like that. So then I can just hop over here and I just repeat that same thing. But I'm going to do one more just to show you again. 1, 2, 3. I'm kind of holding those threads with my finger on the needle. The thread goes right down near the base. Pull the little loops down to the fabric and then pull it through. And then for the lazy daisy, bring your needle up at the base of the little loop and then put the needle down in the same spot, and then up at the top of the loop, the thread goes under the needle, pull, and then tack it in place. So you might also notice I'm not using a hoop. I get a lot of questions about that. I generally don't use a hoop, but I will if I'm doing something that has maybe a satin stitch or long stitches that are going to be woven or something. So there we have January's design in 2 different ways. So it'll be interesting to see which way you choose. I love to see the pictures of your finished projects. So this way is just very, very simple with 1 color. And this way has been colored in with the colored pencils, and then just 3 different colors. And this is the Moda linen fabric. So hopefully you get to cozy up in a nice comfortable chair in the month of January and stitch away. Thank you. Bye.